Jim Parker,
Nice meeting you.
welcome out to Time with Uncle Sam.
Yes, sir.
And is this your first time doing a podcast?
100%.
All right, so the couple ground rules is don't do what I'm already doing. As you get here, you sit and you start swinging back and forth.
Fair enough.
But these are the comfy chairs.
Yep.
So, anyways, you're running for Switzerland County Sheriff,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. One of my frustrations has been just from a voter perspective. Like when I go to the polls over the last 10 plus years of voting, and a lot of these county government issues, I'll be looking through the ballot, and I typically don't take the time to go look at, like a pre-ballot because I'm busy. Life's
Right.
full. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about. And I go up and I show up to the polls and I go to vote for somebody and I go, oh man, I know that person. I haven't talked to them in like 9 months. I
Right.
didn't know they were running for this. Or you see somebody running and you're going, man, I talked to them yesterday. They're running for this. What does that person even do?
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff's a little bit different. That's a lot more well-known of an office. Or sometimes I go and I vote and I'm going, there's 3 different people here. I don't know who these people are.
Right.
And I don't know what their beliefs are. And so one of the frustrations that I've had is there's just the papers don't put anything out. Nobody reads the paper anymore. All you see is a clip of somebody, a soundbite of somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually either lying about, I look so good, vote for me. And you're like, yeah, they really look that good. Or somebody slandering the other opponent going, they're so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, that probably not that bad. I wonder what the whole story is. And so this form of just being able to sit down and conversate, at a small table like this, and the 5,000 people or however many, 500 people or 5 people get to be at the table here.
Yes, sir.
And just get that feel. So running for sheriff,
Yes.
first thing, like if you knock somebody voter's door and they're like, dude, I got 20 minutes. Here's a Coke or a lemonade or something. Sit on the front porch. Tell me about yourself. Where'd you raise? Born, raised. What's your story in 5 minutes? What would that be?
If I just had to break it down real quick, I was born and here in Indiana, Dearborn County, born and raised in Patriot, Indiana.
Okay.
My grandparents' farm is primarily where we spent a majority of our life growing up.
Okay.
My parents and
That was in
aunts and
Dearborn
uncles-
or in
that was in Switzerland County.
Switzerland County?
Yes. Yep. Right outside of Patriot, in between Patriot and Hilltop Basic Resources, there was our farm was right behind where they referred to the land development. So we lived right in that area there on the outskirts of Patriot.
What kind of farming did they do?
So they did tenant stuff out where like beans and corn was leased out, but we did hay, and they also raised cattle, and we did tobacco every year too. That was the big thing when I grew up. Was either one shape, form, or another. You were either following a tobacco setter, or if you were big enough, you were up in the tiers. So that was definitely life growing up.
So you've earned plenty of your sweat equity in life.
Well, very much. You learned really quick, yeah, that the family unit being together and working together, it just the team always survives better that way,
Right.
for sure. And then from there, later in life, when I got out of school,
Did you go to school in Switzerland County?
Yes,
then?
I went to school in Switzerland County, and then first real job outside away from everything, I was able to join the Carpenters Union, and I worked in it for about 7 or 8 years. They put you through essentially a internship, essentially, where you go from just learning the trade all the way up to a journeyman apprenticeship.
Okay.
And through the process of that, it was able to let me be able to go to college as well too. So I was able to get an associate's degree in applied science through carpentry there. They always wanted to work you from being able just to be able to drive the nail to be able to run the work too as well. So they wanted you to be able to float around and that. I'd always wanted to serve my country though. That didn't work out for me earlier in life. So I've always
Same.
had an interest in being of some service, and I always loved law enforcement. Friends of friends were involved in it, so I always kind of was in awe when they came around, kind of thing. So that was in a time where it was very hard to get a police job because everybody wanted to be a cop at that time. So
This was pre-2020.
yes, yeah. You're talking back in when I first got hired as a police officer, is 2007. So
Oh wow! All right.
yeah, and every place you applied to, there was 4 other people that were candidates. So
Okay.
it was very interesting times. It took me a while, about a year and a half, applying up and down the river, and then I finally got lucky enough that the Switzerland County Sheriff's Office hired me.
Okay.
And then I worked there for about 7 or 8 years, and then the state of Indiana. I got to know some of the guys that worked. The casino was there, so I got to know some of
Oh,
the guys that worked in the
Rising
casino.
Sun or Belterra?
So I actually got to learn them, meet them at Belterra. They were gaming agents that worked there. They were
Okay.
stationed there. Originally, it was state troopers, and then eventually they transitioned into the gaming commission on that part of it.
Okay.
They actually had troopers there, and then they did a change on that.
That was an administrative change at a state level?
Yes.
Like creating a gaming commission?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it's its own police agency now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out, but they eventually ended up changing the criteria. You didn't have to actually be a trooper to do that job. They actually sent you through a tier 2 class to be able to do that.
Okay, gotcha.
So I had already been through the normal tier 1 class, so I was already eligible, and I was lucky enough to get hired there. I worked in the casinos as a plainclothes police officer for about 4 years.
All right.
And then from there, I ended up coming back to the sheriff's office when.
What? I mean, were you working like days, nights? What was the casino?
So on the casino, it was all normally shifts in law enforcement are based off of seniority. So the lower seniority, you're going to probably get the later night shifts. So you're going to be the night shift guy, no matter where you're at. Like at the sheriff's office, you're usually 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. On that shift, I think I worked like a 10 to 6. It was like a 10-hour shift. So you come in at 9 or 10 at night, or 8,
and get off at 7 or whatever.
in the morning. Yes, sir. Yep.
So did you deal with a lot of interesting people at that shift?
You get to see all sorts of different people. Yes, all different walks of life.
What is and if you're not allowed to say this because of previous employers, whatever, I understand. But what was one of the funniest stories from that tenure?
Probably more than likely, I probably shouldn't have.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep. And during that time,
I got other buddies who are cops. My brother was a cop.
Yep.
So the funny thing, like I was. You want to talk about being in awe of people?
Yep.
My older brother is 8 years older than me.
Okay.
So he's kind of like a second dad, not just his big brother / second dad.
Yes, sir.
And my dad traveled a lot as a professional speaker.
Okay.
So a lot of times throughout the week, it was, or the weekend, or whenever my dad's travel schedule was, my older brother was kind of the man of the house. So I'm 8 years old. He's 16. That's an obvious man, boy, comparison scenario. So, whenever he became a cop, it was like, and we'd visit him. He was in Florida.
Very much.
Yeah. I got Zoom, FaceTime, other stuff. I didn't have a phone. I wasn't even on Facebook back then.
Right.
So I talked to my brother like once every 6 months, like, hey, who'd you arrest?
Right.
Tell me a funny story of, some individual person. So that's the curiosity always gets the better of me.
100%.
But I respect maybe not going down a road. So anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No,
So
you're
keep
fine.
going.
While I was at the sheriff's office, I had worked everywhere from being a patrol deputy, and then over the years, I had very much an interest. I like to learn, and I also like to teach others. So I was able to become a certified police instructor through the state of Indiana as a general instructor. And then from there, there's different disciplines you can do. You either stay as
How
a
does
general.
somebody get into that? Is that just like a test? Is that school?
So essentially what you have to do is you have to have so many years of experience or you have to require a waiver to be able to go earlier, which is at least 3 years of experience on duty.
Okay.
They want you to have a ground basis before you start teaching other people to be
Makes
able
sense.
to understand how to do the job. And then after that, we moved from, you can have different specialties. You can either learn how to do like emergency vehicle operations where you're driving cars and teaching people how to do that. You can learn firearms to where you're actually able to teach people from the fundamentals of just how a firearm operates to be able to teach them how to shoot.
Right.
If they have problems, how to make them more proficient. And then you have defensive tactics, which essentially early on, I really wish that our school would have been maybe a little bit bigger and had like a wrestling program or something like that. I figured out that was kind of my niche where I really like to do. And with that, I went into the defensive tactics instructor portion of it. And I was also able to be a taser instructor too. So I really enjoyed being able to teach people how to do something to where we can go from just interpersonal communications where we're talking to where, I've asked you to do something. Now I'm telling you to do something. Now I got to show you how to do it.
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then,
so when did you're not with the sheriff's department anymore, correct? What was your next career move? So 07 you started with them?
Yeah, I started in 07 at the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And then 2014, I ended up going to the gaming commission.
Right, so 7-year tenure with Switzerland County Sheriff's Department.
Yes, sir. And
was all that just as a deputy? Were you instructor? Were you sergeant? I mean, what was the rank that you left and exited?
I started out as a deputy and became an instructor during the course of that time. And then prior to leaving there, I had achieved a position of it was an investigator detective is what it was.
Okay.
So then I was working. There was 2 of us there at that time, so we worked interchangeable with each other. So.
Okay.
Yep.
How big was the department as far as number of deputies at that time?
So there was one deputy per days, and there were two deputies on nights, and then there were two detectives for the department. So it was only what, six? Yeah, one, two, three, six people working the road roughly at that time.
So how many total? You got like a 25 person department then?
No, no, no. You're talking less than 10. Yeah, there's
Total?
yeah, total. Yeah, you had 2 day shift officers, then you had 2 night shift officers that worked together.
Were there any gaps in that schedule or 24/7?
There were some times when you were the only officer on for the whole county at night. So
Okay.
yep, and there's some times where we worked an older schedule at that time too, where on Sundays you worked 8 hours by yourself. So you either worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. by yourself, which was the day shift. The other guy would come in at 2 p.m. and he'd work till 10 p.m. by himself. And then the next guy, the last guy, he would work 10 p.m. all the way to 6 a.m. So if you got into something really bad, you had to hope that you were really coordinated with the people around you at that time.
Who I've got customers and
Mhm.
friends who are state troopers, and they talk about like districts, regions,
Mhm.
but I don't really know what those are, how
Mhm.
they work. How far away is backup if you need a state trooper at that? I mean, this is 10 years ago.
Mhm.
What did
At that time, you were lucky that if there was a state trooper that was on duty, you guys would usually communicate together and you would know where each other was at in the county.
they 30 minutes, half hour away?
But if they got called up to the interstate because of bad weather or something like that, you may be, oh, you're 20 minutes out, 25 minutes out from somebody getting to you, because they'd have to get up out of bed, or vice versa. You would call for the adjacent county. So you would call for Ohio County if you were closest to that, or you would call for Jefferson County if you were close to that end
Yeah.
of the county. So they were the closest ones that could get to you. So you
Gotcha.
had to ask for mutual aid assistance.
So 2014, that's what you transferred into the gaming commission.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
What's that portion look like?
So during that, essentially, we were gaming commission agents. We were responsible twofold. One, our responsibility was to protect the revenue for not only the casino, but also two, for the state, because that is a source of income.
Right.
Also, two, we dealt with criminal matters that occurred. We primarily focused on public safety when it came to that, outside of the turnstiles. So that was kind of where
Okay.
our border was.
What kind of criminal stuff? I mean,
You
theft, fraud.
Yes, you would deal with everything from blue collar crimes, where there may be a domestic up in the hotels, and you would respond to that initially, all the way down to people trying to cheat at gambling, or
Was there a lot of that, or is that kind of a minor thing?
it all depends. Things come in waves. It's right. It's just sometimes it's seasonal. You'll have an issue for a little bit, everything will clear up, and then something happens again. So it was very interesting to learn all that, because they have to teach you that portion of it as far as on that. And
It's a whole different thing.
Whole different
than,
ballgame,
whole
yes.
different ballgame.
No,
All right.
and we were plain clothes, but I mean, you could tell who we were. We didn't necessarily blend in exactly with everybody else. We kind of stood out.
So how long were you there? 2014 to when?
2018.
Okay.
So I was there for 4 years, and
Okay.
then one of my old partners, he was going to be running for sheriff. I had an interest. I always missed working the road.
Right.
I really like doing that. And
What was the reason you changed? Just new opportunities or
Yeah,
pay?
just growth, essentially, personal growth.
Right.
At a certain point, you want to try to challenge yourself, and
Oh,
also
absolutely.
to improve your financial income for your
Right.
family. At this point, I was by the time I went to the gaming commission, I was divorced from my first wife and still had my 3 children. So, and that's one of those things to where, like, is as much my fault as it is anybody else's, right?
Right.
You get married young, and maybe things
Well,
just don't work out. So
Wearing
that
the
this
badge
all-
is not a gentle thing on a marriage.
Yes,
I know that
yes,
from
and
family and other things. So.
and then through that, like, I've always been lucky enough that, like, even though we didn't work out so great together, we've been great as co-parents. So
Right.
it actually worked out that we can be really good friends and make sure that our children grow up to be
Yep.
good people. So
How many kids you have?
so it was supposed to be me and a dog when I was young, and now I'm on.
What kind of dog? That's the real question.
A loyal
don't
one. Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
don't irritate the Chihuahua people. They're the teacup Yorkie folks.
Right. No,
You didn't have a Chihuahua, did you?
no,
Okay,
I did not.
thank God.
No.
I was going to offend you.
no, not at all.
I've got Great Danes. I
Yep.
grew up with labs.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
teacup Yorkies are not my
I
cup
understand.
of tea. So
we've
no
had
offense to
Great
anybody who
Danes.
has one. Hope you vote for him or whoever you want to vote for. But
Yep. So now I'm on second wife and 5th child. So I have 2 sons I was lucky enough to meet in life and adopt, and then I had 3 daughters between the 2 wives. So
rich
very
man.
lucky.
There we
Yes,
go.
very lucky.
Awesome.
So-
So 2018, you left there
Mhm.
and went to what?
I actually came back to the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And worked at the sheriff's office. And then my family expanded. It got bigger. So we went from, that's when I met my second wife. And then now I have my 4th child, my next son, and then also 2. Then it turned out too awful long before that, we decided, talking about having another child. So now we've gone from 3 to 4 to now 5. So the to try to financially offset that, I decided that I would try to look into a different direction, and ended up lucky enough to be able to get a job in the private sector working in a steel mill across the river,
Okay.
which was a polar opposite. I had gotten lucky enough that I got hired there, but it was sight unseen. I didn't really know what I was getting into until day one. So go from industrial work as a carpenter to being a police officer, now working in a steel
To
mill.
gambling, now
Yeah,
to
yes, yeah,
steel mill.
yeah. That's a plethora. There's multiple different little
Life
facets there.
experience.
Yes,
Well, cool.
and then from there, I've been there, and then I actually left there and went to work for Dearborn County.
Oh, neat.
Was for Dearborn County for a short period of time.
The sheriff's department here?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then for a short period of time, I was hired back into the steel mill into a different position than what I was before. Prior to that, I worked at what's essentially called a strand tender. We would take the metal after it gets melted down in the shop, it goes to an LMF where they batch it together, and then it gets sent to the caster. So what my job was essentially spinning these ladles with the molten steel and pouring it into the machine. And then you go from there. Once you learn that job and you're sufficient at it, you have the ability, if you're interested, to become actually the pulpit operator. I was lucky enough that the gentlemen that I worked with were very much teachers, and if you were willing to learn, they were willing to teach you, so you could just take more of the
Take advantage of it.
responsibility. Yeah. So that way you could be interchangeable. It wasn't just one or two guys that did it. All of us could do it.
Right.
So if someone called in sick or vice versa, we could all rotate through. So I learned how to do the pulpit. And then during that whole process, I got to meet a lot of really good mentors, not only in the law enforcement section, but also too in just working in the field. And the guys that I got to work with, they would show me anything I wanted to do.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the company I worked for decided to expand and get bigger. So now they've went from, we're just running this one machine, to now we're going to build a machine twice as big as what the other one was.
Oh,
So
dang.
I got lucky enough that we needed to be able to have people that could work with contractors and with industrial builders that had an idea of what they were doing. So I actually got pulled from the floor and got to work on part of that. I was a point of contact for the contractors. So you would have 10 or 15 guys that are working in an area, and you were
Right.
the person who helped coordinate on our side of it with them. And
Gotcha.
I did that for a short period of time, so they were done.
So that takes you up to 2024 or 20? Or are you still there now?
So I'm there now. Yep.
Okay.
I'm doing a different job. Yep. In between that time, I had actually became
8 years there now?
About about 5 years.
21 you started there?
Yeah, 2020.
You're starting your 6th year.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so 5 years in. All right.
And then while I was there, I was also too lucky enough with my prior law enforcement experience. They created a security coordinator, an security emergency response coordinator position. And
Okay.
essentially, what your job was site security. If there was any sort of issues that happened there,
Right.
also too, you were asset protection. So if anything was taken from the property, essentially you were the police officer for there that coordinated with outside sources.
People think gaming's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wait till you go through a manufacturing plant, and there's a lot. It's more important than
hundreds
gold
of-
bricks running
yeah,
around. Like,
hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes.
yeah.
Probably
Neat.
millions, yes.
Well, good. Well, let's get into. I had some people text me some questions that are relevant to them
Awesome.
for sheriff campaigns. Let me just run through some of these
Okay.
and go from there. First question: have you ever run for office before? If so, what and when?
Absolutely not. I have not ever before.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Did you think a year ago that you'd be running for sheriff's office? or-
When one of my prior partners and I, we would ride around at night, and he wanted to run for sheriff, and I wanted to run for sheriff too. And he ended up achieving that goal, and then I thought the time had passed for me. But at this stage, if I don't do it now, I don't know when I'll do it. So now's the time to
Give it a
jump in.
run.
Yeah.
So what? There's a lot of different things people think of when they think of sheriff candidate.
hmm
From a law enforcement perspective,
Mhm.
as diverse as your background, what if you got somebody like me who's not in law enforcement, what should the role of the sheriff's department play in the normal person's life, and in what way am I most likely to come in contact with law enforcement? How does that affect the everyday person's life?
I feel like in the everyday person's life, essentially us being proactive, being seen. How nice is it that if you're at a baseball game and you see a police officer drive through and he's not on with his lights and sirens, he's just driving through just to make sure everybody's doing well. everything's okay. I think the more proactive that we are instead of reactionary, there's a portion of our job that's always going to be reactionary.
Right.
You're going to get a phone call, a bad situation happened that you didn't know anything about, and you have to show up there and try to help work through that situation. But in my eyes, the more we can be out and be seen, you can detour a lot of problems, or at least
Right.
push them other places, essentially.
Okay. What? Let's see what the next question is here. Here's another question. As a father, what are the top 3 things you want to provide for your community from the sheriff's department to ensure that your county is a better place to live?
I want people to be able to feel comfortable to walk at night out on the street, no matter where they're at. If they come out of a restaurant in town, or vice versa, if they just out and they have to walk out to their mailbox, that essentially we're proactive enough and we're out there to make sure that they know that if they need us, we're already out there and we're trying to detour things from happening. I was always taught that essentially there's different types of individuals in the world, right? There's sheep, there's sheepdogs, and then there's the wolves, right?
Now you're speaking my language.
So if you're the sheepdog, a lot of times the sheep confuse you for the wolf because you have teeth too, and you kind of act like him. But the difference is because your moral compass.
Right.
And moral compasses, unfortunately, are not inherently born to you.
No.
You have to be taught that.
Yeah.
And everybody's perspective is different on what their morality is. So
Right.
in the sense of being the protector, your job is not necessarily to walk amongst the sheep, but you walk on that outside perimeter, so
Right.
that way the sheep can live their life. But yet you're always holding that wolf on the other side, because he's never going away.
Right.
You're never going to be able to totally eradicate crime. It's going to happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of situations I've been called to, it's really, really good people that just get stuck in a really bad situation, and emotions in that moment just overwhelm them. Normally on the Monday through Friday, they're a very logical person, but they make a mistake.
Right.
Everybody makes mistakes, right?
Yeah.
It's what you do after you make that mistake that
Right.
makes you who you are. So
one of my favorite questions to ask people, because I think it's really revealing of who they are as a person, is this: who is one of your greatest heroes in life and why?
Probably my grandpa.
Okay.
Yep. So he was an older man even when I was young, it seems like. So I always knew him as an older man, but his whole life, he was very, very strong. He was very, very active, and he was very, very independent. He always was the type person that told me, he's like, don't expect somebody to come rescue you.
Yeah.
You have to start rescuing yourself. And when help needs to be there, it'll show up.
I believe in that. That's a good life principle.
Essentially, he had been through World War II. He had been through the Depression. He was born in the 1920s. So like he had seen everything from, grew up on a farm where they used horses to tend the farm, all the way up to having his own equipment.
Yeah.
So he had seen so much of the world change, and don't get me wrong, he was a gruff fella at times, but also too, he had a kindness about him.
Yeah.
That he knew when to be on which side of it. But also too, he wasn't always the most social individual either.
Right.
And around the right people. That's what I've always been. If you're around people that are like-minded, it's easier to be yourself. Where if you're around people that may not feel the same way as you, he was a little bit more guarded. But
right.
I always looked at him as a hero to me.
There was I don't know if it was a military podcast guy I was watching, but somebody had said that you don't have the ability to be nice if you don't have the ability to be mean.
100%.
And they were talking about like the human psyche of some of the kindest people, the most gentle people they've been around are like Navy SEALs or Delta Forces guys. Like they've killed people before. They know essentially like weak people don't make good people.
No.
Strong people, violent people who are capable of much violence, but choose kindness.
Controlled.
Yes. That's
100%.
So when I hear of like old timers like that,
yes,
that's what rings true for me. So
100%.
If elected, how do you plan on staying connected to your constituents?
So as far as staying connected with constituents, there would be very much an open door policy, which goes along with this. It's something that's been brought up that I've been very open with since the beginning, is I intend on still keeping my job that I currently do have. With that, a lot of people are confused on how can you do both. But with that, I very much have a plan that we can talk about here in a little bit, to where I'm still going to be available on both.
Right.
If people show up there and I'm not there, which that happens right now.
Right.
Traditionally in a sheriff's office, you work Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. You're
Right.
in the office. But after that, weekends, holidays.
You're always on call.
100%. You're always there, always there. You may not be in the office, but you're always available,
Right.
essentially. And a lot of times, sheriffs don't necessarily post their personal phone number out there for the whole world. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that, but they don't. They, since they're maybe. But essentially, if you get a hold of the sheriff's office, they can always get a hold of the sheriff, and
Right.
he's always able to get a hold of you.
Right.
Essentially. So.
What, in your opinion, like say you weren't running for sheriff
Mhm.
and you and I were just sitting down, I'm a voter in your county. I don't know any of the candidates running. You're not running. You don't know any of the candidates running, but you've got your experience with law enforcement.
Mhm.
In your perspective, what are some basic character traits that predominantly make for a good sheriff or somebody in leadership in an executive role
Mhm.
in law enforcement? What would some of those, and I'm not talking about like, did you steal your hand from the cookie jar? Like that's
Right.
a pretty obvious thing, but there
Right.
are certain character traits. You obviously worked under different leaders,
Mhm.
had different teachers in your life.
Yes.
What are some of those character traits that you think?
One of the biggest ones I think is ownership. That essentially this is part of you and you are part of them. That essentially your team thrives only if you can remove all the roadblocks from them, essentially, on that part of it. Like your job as a leader is being a servant leader, essentially, not only for the community, but the people that you serve inside your own department. Honesty and integrity. With the honesty part, you're going to have to tell people sometimes things they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But it has to be lawful, and it also too has to be in the best interest of people.
Right.
With integrity, being willing to be open enough that if you do make a mistake or someone makes a mistake under your charge, that you own it and you're able to work through it, and just be a decent person in general.
Right.
On that part of it. Integrity, just mainly holding the line, that you do have that line in the sand that you can't cross, and
Right.
vice versa, you're not going to let anybody else cross either. I think very much, it sounds silly, but like a can-do attitude. So many times we get put in situations to where we can think of 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't do something when it would just be easier just to go do it and be done with it.
Yeah.
So very much fostering the team first.
Okay.
But also too, in those circumstances too, you have to be able to, if you remove roadblocks and yet the teams, try to get them to be able to take charge on themselves. Because if you're truly a good leader, your team doesn't need you to be there to tell them how to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've not only made it accessible for them to learn that, but you've also charged them with being able to make those decisions without you being there.
So just, to back up a section, you had talked a bit ago about accessibility, etc. You brought up the thing, you're still working, you plan on keeping your other job, which in my mind, I ran 2 businesses. Like 80 hours a week is normal for a lot of blue collar people. It's like, hey, I run a farm full time, and that's always a full time plus. Oh, and then I go work 40, 50 hours a week. How do you do both? I don't know. It's just I'm an American, and that's what you just got to do. The government's not coming to save me or pay my bills. That's normal. But from that perspective, there's a little bit more flexibility that may come with farming or having your own business. But how do you plan on balancing those 2 roles?
So right now, when we were talking about what a traditional schedule is for a sheriff, they just work Monday through Friday. So they're there 20 days out of the month, actually in the office, possibly. With my schedule, I only am scheduled at my job for 15 days out of the whole month. So actually 15 days out of the month, I'm not on anyone's schedule at all. So if I work partial days on the days that I'm already working, because right now I do the same thing at home. I wake up and I have this void of time that gets used for either washing dishes or working on the house or doing something before I leave for work every single day that I'm already scheduled.
Or if you're me, sometimes it's like 2 hours of Instagram videos, and you're like,
that happens too.
That's not a successful decision, but those were some funny, epic fails or something.
You got to have that wind down time too, right? But then also too, with those 15 days, I only get 2 weekends out of the month that I'm actually off. So if you take those days away, that still leaves you another 11. So that puts me at roughly 25 to 26 days of availability that I can be at the actual office, or vice versa. So your
schedule just fits perfect, like a seamless. Yes. Okay, gotcha. All right.
But a lot of people on the surface, when they're like, "Oh, well, what your jobs do you do?" Like they very much mesh together.
What are the 3? And every sheriff's department is different. Every county is different. But for Switzerland County, what are your top 3 issues, or the top 3 issues that the sheriff's department or at the sheriff's department that you would either like to continue,
Hmm.
like things that are done really well,
Hmm.
or things that maybe have room for improvement?
Okay. So I think that everybody that's in the sheriff's office right now is very much capable of doing anything that ever comes across the plate. I think that they're solid people inside the department. The merit deputies are absolutely awesome. You know, any job that comes across there, they can get it done on that portion of it. The things that I would like to do a little bit differently and a little bit change is um, essentially right now we don't use body cameras and we don't use car cameras.
Really?
Yes, where I have had exposure at other departments, when you have that, a lot of people are apprehensive about it at first. It's just like back
Yeah,
when
but
I
it
started.
protects the cop more, doesn't it?
It
It
very much
protects everybody.
protects everybody. It holds us accountable on our end of it on
Right.
how we're doing things, but it also holds the public accountable too. Because if for whatever reason somebody did want to come in and talk to me and file a complaint, it's very easy that I'm able to go and just
Just
draw
pull up.
yep, and be able to check it and be able to either verify and take care of the situation or nullify the situation, and it stops there.
Is there a reason why you don't have cameras now? Is it a funding
Uh,
problem from council and commissioners,
On that
or
on that situation, I don't know. As far as on that circumstance, I
Okay.
wouldn't want to question the administration. They're doing everything that they can and the best that they can.
right?
I just have a little bit different view on it on that part of it. Um,
How much does a body camera cost?
so a taser can cost $2,000. So a body camera could be probably, I would think, in that area, if
Okay.
or less maybe. Another department that I worked for, we actually used Motorola cameras that connected to our Motorola radios, which connected to our actual vehicle too. So video audio was caught all different places too.
Everywhere.
Yes, yes. Another thing
So
too
don't
is
fart too loud because everybody else is going to hear it in the
100%. Yes,
prosecution, right?
yes.
Shows you where my
No,
maturity level is.
you got to be always aware, always aware. Another thing too is I would like to be able to secure the vehicles a little bit more. Like right now, we have no cage cars at all.
Really?
Yes. So essentially, you roll around, and if you do end up having to detain somebody or arrest them, they actually just sit in a passenger car with you. Or if you arrest 3 people, there's you and there's 2
And they
other
can
people.
pull their feet up and kick you,
Yeah.
or
So that I would like to have a secure area in the back of the cars to where even if it's just a partial cage. But the thing is, with a lot of this is funding. You would have to either look into grants or you have to work with county
Yeah.
council. Um, with that also too, something else too, we were talking about schedules. The traditional sheriff's office schedule is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. A lot of times
12-hour
12
shifts.
hour shifts,
Okay.
and it rotates. So you'll work one week Monday, Tuesday, you're off Wednesday, Thursday, then you work Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
Sundays sometimes are a short day for you, so they kind of work that part of it out. What I would like to do is go to the 12s, so that way that each shift is totally full on those shifts. We'd have to figure out how to make that work with money and on that portion of it. But then also too, I would like to spin the dial a little bit. Right now, if you're a brand new officer, you're going to get stuck on 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the only way that you're ever going to get to move forward on shift is if somebody else retires or if they get hired at another department.
Right.
It's through attrition essentially. Otherwise, you could spend 15 years working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3/4 of your whole career. With that, it makes it very complicated for you to be able to make doctor's appointments. You can only do those on your days off. So then your days off now, you have to take care of personal business.
Right.
What I would like to do is actually dial it to where it's actually a 6 p or a 12 noon to midnight schedule. You just twist it 6
Oh,
hours. So
yeah.
then essentially, if you want
You
to
either
be able
get
to
your
do
mornings
sports
off or your evenings off.
every
one
day,
or two.
and you have enough time to be able to go home and get 8 hours of sleep if that's what you want
Right.
to do, and you still have 4 hours to be able to spend with your family or do whatever
Right.
you want to do. Or let's just say you want to participate in sports and your child is doing soccer. You want to be able to be there at 6 p.m., but you're the night shift guy. So on a traditional schedule, you would
You'd have to be
in
there leaving at 4 or
Yep, and you
5:15
would
or
never
something.
have you never be able to have the obligation. Now, if you want to
That's
be
a
the
good
night
idea.
shift guy, you can work midnight to 6 a.m.
Right.
and then you're always available for your kid's schedule.
Okay.
So,
Creative thinking outside the box is what it goes. So, sheriff's department questions from cops. These are some questions that I was reaching out to different people. There's other sheriff interviews that I'm doing.
Mhm.
I've got, I think, 2 more counties, maybe 3 to do here. And so I just reached out to some other people in law
Yep.
enforcement. These are some questions that came up. The sheriff's departments, just in general,
Mhm.
and other departments have faced significant attrition rates in recent years.
Mhm.
I don't think defund the police in 2020 was very kind
No.
to people, even in rural areas.
Yes.
This person's interested in your plan to retain current deputies
Mhm.
and to attract new hires. Specifically, they'd like to know your approach to addressing the following key areas: compensation, morale, training, and team building. So with compensation, how do you plan to ensure that the deputies receive competitive salaries and benefits?
So just for right now, knowing some of the information that I was aware of, our county is actually going to be able to give some of the deputies a pay increase, as well as the jail and 911 communications, because they're working on a contract with another county to be able to house their prisoners,
Oh, neat.
which is a great, awesome thing that they've
Yeah.
done. It gets us to where we need to be at. But the downfall with that is, though, it's a contract. So that's only a short-term fix. So whoever's in this role as a sheriff is going to have to be able to try to work with county council and other individuals to try to eventually work that whole portion of it over into like the general budget. So then that way in 4 years, if the other county, a new sheriff comes in, they decide they no longer want to house their prisoners there, they decide to take them somewhere else, all of a sudden you don't lose all that funding and it just goes away. And then, how do you fill
Right.
that void?
Right.
So trying to be able to actually shift what we have over into the general fund, which would create more money on that portion of it.
Second point was morale. What measures will you implement to maintain and enhance the morale of your deputies?
So, in my experience, morale can be very fickle at times, to say the least.
That's true.
There can be a fan favorite, but also too that fan favorite may not be capable, and vice versa. There could be somebody. So you were talking earlier about leaders and how they go about stuff. So performance and trust is something that I've been taught, that essentially when those high speed, low drag people, where you're a very high performer, but people don't trust you
Right.
as an individual, you can pull away from the group. But if nobody trusts you, they're not going to follow you, vice
Right.
versa. Where I would much rather have somebody who's even a mid performer of high trust,
Right.
compared to having that very high performer that is just a me person on that portion of it.
Right.
I think you have to make sure that the team knows that you're there for them. And going in day one, this is going to be a change for everybody. It doesn't matter who gets sheriff.
Right.
Things are going to be changing. There's people who are retiring from the department that are in leadership roles that'll no longer be there. There'll be voids that have to be filled. So there's going to be a learning process on that. To just say that, hey, you can go in and fix morale, I don't believe that can happen.
Yeah,
I think you have to be very open about that right out of the gate too. Like, hey, no one likes change, because when you're usually a police officer, you're in law enforcement, you're that class A personality.
Right.
You love doing the constant. You don't love change. Whenever change comes, everybody's growling in the background. Like they'll do what you have to do when the boss is saying it. But when you're over here, like, I am doing it.
Yeah.
Right. But essentially, I think the more that they see that you're behind them and that you are focused on the team, then the team eventually can start excelling. You remove the roadblocks. You're a servant leader, but also too, you have to address situations too, because I was always told on a submarine, which I've never served on, but on a submarine, just 3 drops of oil in the water source on that submarine, it'll end everybody that's on that submarine.
Really?
So you have to be able to address situations that may be poisoning the team itself too. So you have to have a grace period. One of my grandpa's sayings, like, you have an X amount of time. You get in the bus or you get under the bus, but we're going to be going in this direction, right? And I know that sounds terrible, but there is a transition
it's the
period.
honesty, yeah.
No, but at a certain point, it's no longer. It's just the same as our job. Whenever I would show up and I would have to do something, I would explain to you. I would rather talk to somebody for 20 minutes than to fight them for 2 minutes, right?
Right.
But once I explain it to you and you no longer want to do it, then I tell you what to do. And if I don't tell you what to do, I got to show you how to do it, right? And then do those levels as well. That applies in even inside too. What was the next one?
Number 3 was training. How will you provide ongoing training and professional development opportunities for your deputies? And I think the context of that question was, like here in Dearborn County, you can drive across the river to Northern Kentucky. You can drive. I mean, I've got customers and friends that go to and then work for Hamilton County. Pay is much, much higher. But on the flip side of that, money's not everything.
Right.
The kind of environment which is set by leadership. You can have a great organization and a horrible leader, somebody who's manipulative or one-sided or plays favor, or they play the politics of the thing instead of actually just, no, we're here to do a job. Put the politics BS aside. I mean, as sheriff, you kind of have to handle the PR because you are a politician.
Right.
You were elected by the people, paid by a taxpayer, responsible to the voters. That's the definition of a politician.
100%.
I think it's funny, people always stand up and they say, well, I'm not a politician. That's like somebody walking into the NFL and be like, well, I'm not an athlete, guys.
Right.
I'm one of the fans.
Right.
No, by definition, the only question is, are you a trustworthy politician or are you a lying scumbag?
Right.
You know, and so when you look at training and development, there's
Hmm.
a lot of people who will stay. Like I got a book up here, someplace over here called Necessary Endings,
Hmm.
and it's a leadership book that talks about the power that somebody may have over you if
Hmm.
they've mentored you for a long time,
Hmm.
and the realization that just because they've made a huge investment in your life doesn't mean you should stay with them.
Right.
You need to learn when that season of your life may be closing or
Hmm.
that season of your career may be closing
Yes.
and move on. Well,
Right.
that's developing the leader within you. But at the same token, if you've got the right, like you said, different jobs you've been in,
Hmm.
if you've got the right training and development, somebody else can offer you more money, but you're going, I don't care. You couldn't pay me to handle the drama over at
Right.
your department
Right.
or et cetera. And so from that perspective, what kind of ongoing training, professional development, et cetera,
Hmm.
would you like to implement or would be your plan that you think would help retain people even when maybe competitive wages because of a smaller county, it's
Hmm.
more rural, tax base is lower, which is why people like living in rural counties. I'm that same way too.
Right.
But how do you foster that, or how do you incorporate that perspective
Hmm.
when it comes to training and development?
So as far as like right now, what we've been exposed to is we do everything from what's called Police One, which is online training where you can conduct it that way. There's also too, I would like to reach out to some of the local contacts that I have, like with defensive tactics. There's a certain portion that the state teaches us of defensive tactics that we're allowed to do, but then also too, you're allowed to expand beyond that. So through my own personal experiences, I've been exposed to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu,
Yep.
other places like that. Try to reach out to local places. Hey, would you be willing to donate hours to us, or can we come up there and will you help us get to a certain belt level? If I have a guy here who wants to become a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if he's willing to show up, will you take him on as a student? Will you
Right.
sponsor him? And I know there's even some jiu-jitsu schools that do that here right now. With reaching out, I think that a lot of times we think we're an island. Even as a man myself, like
Yeah.
I think that all the responsibility falls on me. But even as a sheriff's office, yes, we have our own budgets, but also too, there's 92 sheriffs
Yeah.
that are in this whole state of Indiana. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need
Right.
to be able to know what the resources are that we can go out to. Hey, we have a taser instructor here on this side of the, in this area. Do you guys have one? You don't have one. Well, what do you have? We'll
Right.
trade out time.
Collaboration.
Be able to work with not only the community but other police departments, because we can be a lot stronger if we utilize those resources. I may only have this amount of budget, but I have people who are specialized here that you may not have, and I can trade off one way or the other.
Yeah.
So try to expand beyond ourselves, because if you always are that horse with the blinders on, the only portion of the world that you're looking at
Right.
is what's directly in front of you. It's like what the sheriff is. The difference is the sheriff is the one who's sitting back on the coach, and he's able to see the whole picture. The horse has to trust him not
Right.
to run him off the cliff, right?
Right.
And to build that level of trust, not only internally, but with the surrounding areas too. Because in the middle of the night, if we're on the north side of the county, I have to rely on the next county to be able to help my people as much as vice versa. So,
Last point was team building. What initiatives will you undertake to foster strong team building? You may have touched that with classes together,
mhm.
training together, etc. Is there anything else you want to add to that, or did you might have
um,
answered both those questions?
I think with the team building part of it, it's kind of hard to be able to identify that, because each individual, even though you're a team, each one of you are a different gear that turns a different
Right.
direction or operates in
Yeah.
a different way. So I think it boils down to interpersonal communications on that. You can have a broad stroke of a direction of everybody wants to go in, but it's just like if we're all running the race, I may have to come back and help you pick up your backpack to carry it, and then we
Right.
can keep up, vice versa, figuring out what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are and trying to cater to that, because at a certain
So
point,
you're saying that may change 5 years from now. That answer may
100%,
look if you've got different deputies hired on, or as
100%.
the department grows. Okay. Um, you have a significant amount of time, not only as a patrol deputy, detective, private security, emergency response coordinator.
Mhm.
How is your experience in those different roles going to help you? I mean, what about that unique experience is going to help you run a good sheriff's department?
I think the best thing that I've ever, I'm very much not a self talker. If you haven't figured that out by this point, as far as
Yeah.
for self promoter, the one thing that I've always felt like I was able to do is learn to adapt. And through being able to learn to adapt, you can show other people how to do that too. if we do the same thing over and over and over again, we're going to get the same result,
Right.
which to me was always taught that's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
If you're not on the growing side of things, you're on the decline.
Right.
So putting that frame of mind out that we're going to run into situations that we don't know how to deal with. So if we don't know how to deal with it, we don't have to know everything. We just need to know what direction to go from that, or who to call,
Right.
or who to get to help us, and not be ashamed or afraid to say, I don't know everything.
Right.
Nobody who gets this role or vice versa works the road. You don't know the codes inside and out. You have a general understanding of the emergency ones, but the great thing about it is after the emergency is contained, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You slow everything down,
Right.
you work it through. You make sure there's no immediate danger, and you work backwards from that. So.
Okay. So on the jail side of things,
Mhm.
because it's interesting. Somebody had recently posted a question in another sheriff social media account that I was watching,
Mhm.
and I didn't know this, but they said, "Hey, Indiana is unique that the sheriff is also responsible for the jail in their county.
Mhm.
Other states they have different elected. The sheriff runs one portion, the jail runs another." Yeah, so, and I never really thought of like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
the sheriff. The biggest problem usually is you got this whole other wing that most people don't ever see to their job.
Right.
When it comes to the jail and the management side, are you planning any significant changes, or in regard to either staff, management, or policies?
So with that question, actually, one of the people who possibly are going to be retiring is our current jail commander.
Okay.
For the last 8, 10
Is
plus
he one of
years,
those 10 people you said?
yeah,
Okay.
she's one of those people. She's going to possibly be retiring, and then when she does, we're losing a wealth of knowledge. Like she knew that system inside and out, but she also too is a very good teacher and a very good leader. So I personally have not talked to her since I've decided to do this, but knowing who the type person she has either been grooming somebody or she makes sure that her people know the job inside and out too. With the jail, or vice versa, the courts, because you're responsible for court line too. You should be responsible for the courthouse security, and also too you're responsible to serve all the papers that come from the courts. An unusual thing for my county is you're also
How much of that is, you've got two deputies on during the day, whatever.
Mhm.
How much of your, I mean, this probably changed since you've been gone, but how much of your time of those deputies is taken up doing court work versus actual patrol on the road?
So we were actually lucky enough they had created a position that was a paper service position. So there's one individual who's designated that his job on the norm is just to go out and to serve those civil service papers. But he only is able to cover, if he works Monday through Friday, he's only able to cover 8 hours of every day.
Right.
So at a certain point, also too, it needs to be everybody's responsibility that when you
Right.
come in, if you don't have a call, and that's something else that we don't do right now, is that we just cover the whole county. There's no zones. So
Would you change that?
yes, I would change that.
How many zones would you divide Switzerland County up into?
Well, at first, you only have two officers that are on a shift, so you could only do two zones. So you would either do an east and a west, more than likely, split it down the middle. The east side of the county or the west side of the county, whichever is busier, they could if one person takes 3 or 4 calls, they may rotate. So then that way, one person doesn't have to take. If you get 10 calls in that night and 7 of them are actual arrests with paper, you should probably be able to shift that
Switch.
to where
How long does it take to get from one end of the county to the other? Like, what's the shortest distance? Because
driving
roads.
the speed limit or
No,
driving
no.
a
If
signal
your
to
lights on, you're
yeah.
going to back up. I mean, what's that?
20 minutes more
Really?
or more, 25 minutes, yes. From one
And
side
how
all the way to the
many?
half hour, maybe.
I mean, is there just a VV police department? How many metropolitan police departments are there in Switzerland County?
So there's just the Switzerland County Sheriff's Office, and recently the local town police department, which used to be a 6-man department, it just went down to 2 officers, and they have
Like they're cutting their budget down to that,
so
or people left?
I don't know the logistics on that. So if I told you anything else other
Okay.
than that, I just know that currently there's only 2 people there, and they do not work 24/7. So the sheriff's
So you have
office,
to cover VV too.
yes. So you cover the work that they had for 4 more people. Now you cover it with the people that you had before. So something that I feel like we should do is look into how do we grow the department, because to me there should be frontline leadership on every single shift.
Yeah.
So if you have 2 deputies on a shift, there should be a sergeant on that shift too.
Third. Right.
It also allows you too that, hey, if we have vacations or we have sick days or anything like that, we'll offer overtime. But if we can't pay overtime, we'll go down to a minimum of 2 on that shift.
Right.
Like you can let somebody off for vacation or something. Right?
Better than going down to
Yes.
minimum of 1.
And then that way you always have 3 guys. You can have one in the east, one in the west, and the supervisor can float or work post command from wherever they're at.
Gotcha. It's my understanding that there's a significant amount of funds collected from the commissary.
Mhm.
So if you can explain what the commissary is to the layman who may not know that, and then do you know where those funds are being spent right now? And if you don't, it's fine. But if you do you have a different plan to utilize those funds?
So with commissary, that's essentially where the jail has the ability to be able to sell items above a certain level. So essentially, there's certain things as a human being that the state requires is given to you.
Okay,
Whether it be shampoo, soaps,
sure.
toothbrushes, razors, to be able to take care of yourself while you're
Personal
in
care
that.
items.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
If you want to expand upon that, you can either have relatives or somebody else come in and put money in an account that's set aside for you, and then they have essentially a store that they stock with X amount of items. And if
So
you want,
concession stand for
100%,
anything legal.
100%,
Okay.
yes. Now with
So
that,
then the commissary fund is whatever that profit is from the
yes,
concession stand
yeah,
that inmates are allowed to purchase from.
100%, and every bit of that has to be accounted for. It can, the money goes back to roll back into it as well to be able to repurchase items. But also too, I believe that the sheriff's office can use that to be able to fix vehicles. If you have, a car deer accident, deer runs into one of the patrol vehicles, I believe you're able to use it on that money. There are restrictions though. You can't use
Could
it.
you use that for body cams? And
That part I don't know. If I said that, that would be very
what
interesting
about
to look into it.
outfitting the cars with cages
I would like to look into that too. There are limits to it, and you have to make sure to
per state
operate.
law,
Yes,
probably?
yes.
Okay. All right.
And usually the matron is who takes care of that, and that's somebody else. That's another position that may be changing too, depending on what the circumstances are. In the state of Indiana, a lot of times matrons are the sheriff's wife ends up in those roles a lot of times. And if the current sheriff is no longer there, I'm sure his wife would want to stay. But if she decided to go do something else, that would be another position
that you got to fill.
that's very, and it's very skilled. It's essentially like the accountant of
Right.
the sheriff's office on that portion of it. So you have to have somebody in there you can really trust.
People talk about the phrase community policing,
Hmm.
and to me, it just sounds like it's like everything in the last 10 years. You got to have a PR word for
Right,
everything,
catchphrase,
like,
right?
so, but I mean, it is a topic of
Hmm.
conversation. Most people talking about community policing. Would you like to see more, or how would you like to see more engagement from the sheriff or their deputies in public and social media? Something like I follow, like, I don't know if this is something with a new governor or a new whoever's in charge of ISP, but there's a lot of different deputy or a lot of different troopers
Hmm.
that are doing like just traffic updates,
Yep.
road updates.
Hmm.
Like, hey, the weather's out nasty, careful here. Hey, there's a wreck. You got to be careful. You can't share certain sensitive
Right.
information. But
Right.
I'm watching that stuff going, hey, that's kind of helpful.
100%.
Channel 9's not out there,
Right.
but you've got so and so who's a trooper that I know that just lives down the street, or his buddy plays ball with me.
Right.
And that's what's going on all the way up here, or that's the storm moving this way, just general stuff like that. So
Yes, sir.
there's always a kind of a tricky answer to that. But do you have some kind of platform for that, or you have an opinion on?
So I very much am for the platform to where a lot of people use Facebook, Instagram. If there was an account created and there's updates that you could from, any information to where, hey, we have an accident on this road. If you're, you especially want to know if you're going across the Markland Dam where we live at.
Yeah.
Like that is the freeway to get across the river, because over time what's happened in our community, and unfortunately this is one of the financial issues, is we used to be a huge agricultural county. Everybody there was a farmer, or they tended farm, did something like that.
Right.
Over the years, a lot of those people just kind of phased out of it. Some of the farms got bigger, or they became tenant farms. And then now, essentially, we're more of a sleeping community where people live there because they like living in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But yet they work and travel other places.
Right.
So very much so. The current place where I work at right now, they have a thing where you can sign up to get free text messages that, hey, if there's a hazard, or there's a vehicle accident, if there's going to be bad weather or anything like that, somebody can go on there and be like, hey, this road is shut down. If you're going to try to go across the Markland Dam,
Right.
it's going to be shut down for the next hour or so.
That way you're not late for work. Or
Right,
anything.
100%.
Okay.
And you give them the chance to be able to do it. They can opt in, they can opt out, and then you could have your other pages too. But also too with that, there's another hot topic word that people put up out there is transparency. Everybody wants to use the word transparency, but nobody ever really defines it.
It's just it's a marketing word.
It is. And I can't tell you exactly what the definition of it, but I can tell you what my understanding of it is doing police work. I can't be able to close everything about an investigation until after everything goes through the courts, and then it becomes public record a majority of the time. There are still some situations to where people are protected throughout that from the beginning to the end, depending on if they're a witness, if they're
Yeah, like
someone
child
that's
witnesses or
100% right. So transparency is a very flashy word that people try to say that,
yeah.
hey, I'm going to be as transparent as I can.
I'm running for office. Honesty,
Yes,
transparency, and integrity are my
100%,
core values. I have
100%,
no idea what those mean,
right,
but that's what I'm for. Right? It
100%.
just sounds good.
Yes,
Nobody
yes.
explains what their direction is.
Where I do feel like some words that you can use that actually make sense that you can live up to is be fair. Fair
Yeah,
doesn't mean you're always going to get your way. It just means that on the system of scales and balances, you're going to try to do the best for everybody.
right.
And you have to be firm about that. You can't wayward.
Yeah.
People have to understand that, hey, if I get called out
Being
here,
manipulated isn't being fair.
no. And that's another benefit too, I feel like, about being able to stay in my blue collar job. It keeps me grounded. I never forget
Yeah,
where I came from, because every day, just like the people I'm serving, I'm going to a job every day too, and I understand what you have to deal with.
right.
So there's a lot more empathy there.
You're
And
in authority and under authority.
100%. And then being consistent. People should be able to, in my life, if I see somebody show up, if I know them for any length of time, I have an idea of what I'm already getting from that person.
Right.
So be that person that when you show up, they already have an idea that, hey, I may not like what this guy does. I may not even like him as a person, but I tell you what, he's going to be as fair as he can be.
Right.
He's going to be consistent. He's not going to come out, even if me and them don't see eye to eye personally. My job is to protect everybody that's
Right.
in your charge, right?
So I pulled in. I mentioned my older brother who used to be a
Yep.
cop. He was a cop for like 10 years and worked a lot of nights.
Mhm.
And Florida was a different state to be a cop
Oh, wow, I
in.
bet.
And he finally made like detective after 9 years. And like a year later, him and his wife decided, hey, we're moving down south. They actually moved to Honduras, and
Oh,
they're hoping to
wow.
run a orphanage and a school. I think there's a medical clinic there and
That's
some other
awesome.
stuff. So I called him last night. I'm like, hey, bro, I need some advice.
Yep.
I'm doing this sheriff interview tomorrow.
Yep.
If you were sitting down interviewing a sheriff, like what are some questions he would ask? He
Yep.
goes, well, that's a no-brainer, and like rattles up a couple things.
That's awesome.
One of
Shoot.
the things he said, was, so I was on the phone with him for like a half hour. I get a text today. I don't know if it's real or not because you get spam tests all the time.
Uh-huh.
So you have a $61 international fee. So I'm hoping my wife doesn't see that right away.
I
I'm
recently
hoping
got something I thought was spam and I deleted it and I shouldn't have.
it was you're like, oh crap, that got sent to collections,
Yep,
you know.
yep.
So anyway, but what's your average response time? Is that acceptable, or does it need to be improved? And if so, how would you improve it
So if
for Switzerland County?
yes, so if I actually told you a number, I would be lying. But I
Okay.
can tell you it can definitely improve if we increase and we go to zones and patrol. The reason why I say that is if there's something that happens on the east side of our county and both deputies are in VV, you're going to have 15 minutes to get to that. Compared to there's two guys on, if there's an issue that happens, if we already have one that's based out in the east, that's going to cut down that time in half, I would think.
Right.
And vice versa. If you have somebody holding the west side or fading more, if the east side is busier that night, they fade more towards the center to east, vice
But
versa.
they still stay in their zone.
100%.
Okay.
Now, then they can rotate zones back and forth. But I think there would be somebody who could be there for an immediate response. They
Right.
may need to call for help. They may need more people. I mean, I'm a big proponent. You can't have too many people to help you out, right?
Right.
But sometimes I guess there's some situations if we're both trying to put that light bulb in, one of us may be working against the other too.
Right.
So yeah, it's a happy medium you have to figure out.
Agreed. What is the current crime rate for Switzerland County?
So if you were asking a percentage, I couldn't tell you that exactly, but I can tell you that in the numbers, roughly what I've seen is I think overall 911 came in. It was like maybe around the 4 or 5. If I told you the number exactly, I would be misquoting right now.
Okay.
But there's a very significant number of essentially auto accidents as a primary, a large
Okay.
one that they deal with. With that, proactivity. If you're out there, if there are OWI accidents, you're not going to catch everybody who's under the influence. But also too, if I know that the police officers are out patrolling and I got the opportunity to go somewhere else where I think they're not, vice versa, you could detour the situation to that.
Is that something zone policing would help improve?
I think so personally. And also too, by skewing those hours, like right now, our rotation of shift is the same rotation with everybody else. At 6 a.m. in the morning, somebody's going home and somebody else is coming in. Well, that's the same time when all of the traffic is coming through, to be able to go across the river or go to work, right?
So people are just getting to their shift. They're
Yeah.
not pulling somebody over 3 minutes after they clock in
Exactly.
versus
They
that
may
would be
not
the
even
middle
be in
time.
position because they may be living from their house. So if their house is on the other side of the county and they're driving to it, they may not be in those heavier heat zones. By
Do
being
you
able
know,
to
is
look at
there,
that.
you mentioned auto accidents and other things.
Mhm.
So is there a crime rate or a number that's violent crime, nonviolent crime, or 80% of the calls typically nonviolent crime? What's the current demographic for Switzerland County?
So with the highest number of calls, it was the auto accidents. The other ones that were tied together were between domestics, also two drug crimes,
Okay.
and then thefts too. In my experience with burglaries and thefts, those do come in cycles. You'll go a short period of time and you just don't have anything reported, and then all of a sudden you're going to have 3 nights in a row where stuff comes up and there's an issue
Is
on
that
that part
typically
of
the
it.
same person doing
Uh,
3 burglaries in a row?
so that's where another thing I'd like to do is more case management. That was something that I got more exposed to with working with the state, is that essentially following the case all the way from the beginning all the way to the end deposition. There's lots of times, and
How does that work? Are you assigning a deputy to stick with that, or
so that would be where you would have to take in internally. Right now we have obviously the sheriff, the chief deputy. You also have a detective that works there, and then you have the road deputies. I would personally like to modify that detective spot to more of a road boss position, to where they're responsible for doing investigations inside of our jail. So if there's a fight, if there's a drug
yeah?
issue, anything like that, they're responsible for that. I would also like to have them be more the case management officer, to make sure, hey, our evidence when it got collected, where is it at in the process? Is it at the courts? Is it here? Is it ready to get disposed? Where is this initial report? Because normally as a police officer, you arrive, you make an arrest, then you're going to do your initial paperwork, you turn it into the courthouse. 9 times out of 10, until you hear back from the courts, the deputy is usually done with it. Someone needs to be able to follow that case all the way through, and also to understand the mode of operations. If you have something that goes, let's say we have an issue that's going unsolved, to be able to be focused on connecting those issues. Hey, is this just one isolated incident, or is it multiple different incidents, which a detective normally does anyways.
Right.
But he would also be responsible to make sure that, hey, the cases as they go through, where are they at? Are they in a situation where working with the prosecutor's office to try to make sure, hey, where are the holes in this? Where do we need to close? What do we need to follow up on, to make it all the way through to the closeout on that part of it? And do more press releases on the initial part of it. They don't have to be huge. They don't have to be big. But every single case that you do should have a press release where it tells at least the minimum information that's there.
That way, there's not gossip going around. I mean,
100%.
people at least have some information.
100%.
What percentage of your county cases go inactive without being solved?
On that
I mean,
portion.
and you're not with the department the last 7 years,
No.
but do you remember from 8 years ago?
Like I said, once we get to a certain point, sometimes burglaries would just go away, and then the next county over, you would find out they're having the same thing. Then they arrest somebody, and then you're lucky enough that you hope that they're still in possession of maybe some of your stolen property, or vice versa, on that part of it. Some of it
When
is
you
luck.
when you go back to so you left the department in 2014,
The
07 to
first time
2014.
2014, and then the second time is 2020.
Whereas there, now you're getting into cops are doing their job, they're being cops.
Mhm.
Once you get into sheriff's department, now you're playing politics. And I know this from people on council, people commissioners.
Mhm.
That you got your sheriff's association that lobbies, you got your commissioners association, you got your clerks association. Like county government does have a lot of overlap.
Mhm.
Was there a lot of collaboration between these 5 counties down there back when you worked? Has there always been? Were there a lot of rifts?
On that
Because
part of
that
it,
would make sense as a sheriff. Like, screw that sheriff. I don't like him over there. I'm not helping him out with his case. We got our guy.
yeah.
It's not trying to play games. That's just
Yeah.
the way politics works. I mean, it gets clicky like that.
As far as in my personal experience on that part of it, they were able to always put stuff aside if there ever was issues.
Okay.
They never made it well known on that portion of it, and it was always about getting the job done on that portion of it. So I can't really tell you where I've ever really ran into a riff on that part of it. I've been very lucky though. I've heard other places that may or may not have, but like we were always able to coordinate with other people.
Okay. Just a couple last questions I
Mhm.
had. The obvious. What's your stance on things like the Second Amendment, and what's your stance on things like, I mean, just 6 years ago we had um, uh, 2020. I call it people call it COVID. I call it the era of government tyranny.
Uh-huh.
It's just a little bit different perspective on my side of things, but one of the issues that is a big concern to me
Mhm.
as somebody, I'm a big proponent of medical freedom.
Mhm.
and I try to live a healthy life. There's
Mhm.
certain things I want to inject in my body. I don't.
Mhm.
I got a small business. I remember one of my buddies coming up, and this probably isn't politically correct, but one of my buddies came up to me, and I was in the throes in 2020 of it's March.
Right.
I think Trump had said no more ships coming in from China,
Mhm.
which I didn't have a problem with. And the Democrats and the news media were like, he's a tyrant. And 3 weeks later, they're all like, you can't go out of your house. Don't question the authority. I'm like,
Right. Right.
screw you guys. But one of my buddies came over. He's like, well, we might be closed down next week. I'm like, closed down? He goes, yeah, they got this virus coming in. I'm like, the governor said they might be closing everything down. I'm like, well, screw the governor. Who
Right.
died and made him king?
Right.
Yeah, literally what I told my buddies. And the guy's like, I'm not arguing with him. I said, you tell the governor to come down to my house, stick his finger in my face, and tell me on my own property
Right.
that he's going to shut my business down. I will flog him out of here. Like whatever. Not literally. You never know.
Right. Right.
And so, but like we look at that. Like there was an agenda 2020. People, I don't know if you remember it was like the governor of Minnesota back in like 2008, whatever. My dad's from Minnesota.
Mhm.
It was that guy, the pony hair, Jesse Ventura was his
Yep.
name, maybe,
Yep.
like the pony hair tail
Mhm.
guy. I remember seeing clips of him from like 2008 talking to somebody who was like a whistleblower, talking about there's an agenda. They're going to use a virus to control people
Mhm.
and whatever else. And everybody calls him, oh, you're just some quack. You're some conspiracy theory. You're making it up. You like your stupid fake fights. Now you're having some fake whatever.
Right.
12 years later, there was nothing fake about that,
Right.
at least from people in the conservative movement of medical freedom,
Mhm.
not wanting government tyranny. I mean, there's people on the other side that think I was irresponsible. Well, that's their opinion, but my opinion of them is my opinion.
Right.
And so, you look about, there's stuff with certain individuals, whether it's World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization, et cetera, that are talking. I think there's some IT guy out there with a quote going, well, if we were to do a really good job with abortion and vaccines, we can curb the population, And like, that's not AI.
Right.
He legitimately said that.
Right.
And you got a sheriff election. If you win now,
Mhm.
whoever gets elected is getting sworn in December of in January of 27.
Mhm.
That means they're the sheriff through January of 31 or 35 if they're 2 terms.
Right.
And so the sheriff is like literally the most powerful position anywhere.
Mhm.
I mean, the president of the United States, the feds, you look at issues like, and a lot of conservatives have these complaints, but you look at issues like Waco or Ruby Ridge.
Mhm.
Every stinking time there was some Billy Bob stupid sheriff that had no backbone that let the feds walk in and totally run over people's constitutional rights.
Mhm.
When if you had somebody who had some brass and some conviction,
Mhm.
and my inversion of integrity is staying true to what you believe.
100%.
It might be wrong, but you had personal integrity. That's what personal integrity means.
Agreed.
Sticking to your guns on what you said you were going to do.
100%.
So when you talk about those issues like gun control, that's a big question. Or like medical freedom, what happens with what we saw in 2020 of, what do you believe about restricting people's movement or closing down restaurants because somebody, said you were supposed to? Can you comment on that perspective?
So as far as me with the Second Amendment, I'm very pro-gun.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to be able to carry, that's lawful to carry, should be able to. As far as in my perspective, the more even keel everybody is, if you know that there's somebody out there, it detours crime. It's been shown to detour crime. Personally, even to go as far as in the schools, I wish we would be able to have more money for more officers that are actually in the schools.
Agreed.
To be able to detour those sort of situations from happening. It's been proven, and
We
it's taught
protect
to
our
you-
politicians with guns, but no, we're not going to pay to,
right.
put trained people in schools.
Right.
It's nuts.
And as far as your job is to protect the constitutional rights of everybody who's in your district, and anything that's going to go against that, whether it be as far as the health issue or vice versa, they try to take and push. I've seen where there's a local sheriff that right now a judge said to release an individual, but the sheriff himself has seen where the individual has been arrested for multiple serious issues, 17 different times, and he's not going to release him because the judge told him to. And apparently in his area, he's able to do that under those circumstances. And now he's going to possibly be held accountable or try to be held accountable. But if he has that power, just like OR and somebody, and that's if you have a medical issue in the jail, they may be under arrest, but because of a medical issue, you may have to release them because of medical attention and then go arrest them later, right? As long as you're operating inside of the parameters of your power, you have a responsibility to do so.
Right.
And if it becomes a personnel issue, you reach out to the next department over, like, hey, we have this. You utilize whatever resources you have to be able to make that happen, essentially.
All right.
So
in wrapping up, we had a wide array of questions.
Mhm.
I feel like if somebody, I got buddies that live down in Switzerland County.
okay,
I'm going to be texting them as soon as this is up. Like,
Awesome.
hey, there's a guy running for sheriff.
I appreciate
And by the
it.
way, if there's anybody else running for any office,
Yep.
feel free to reach out to me. These are free.
Yep.
As far as what I charge, there's a service charge for somebody to professionally record these.
Yep.
But feel free to reach out to me if you want. But I'm going to be texting them, hey, there's a guy running, watch this.
Yep.
And I feel like there's a pretty good basis that people can get a feel for who you are
Good.
without you having to have, if you get, how many votes total happen in the primary, the Republican ticket? Do you know?
No, I do not know that, but I do know that there are 4 candidates.
Okay.
All of us have different backgrounds. Some of us overlap, some of us don't. But in my personal experience, whoever ends up getting this spot just needs to make sure that they're doing what's best for the community and holding the line for everybody. And as long as whoever gets elected does that, I'd be very much still be happy to either be in this role or just be a community member there either way. So
Good.
I got
Anything
no
else you want
qualms.
to add before we wrap up?
Nope.
Perfect.
We're good.
Jim, thanks for coming on, man.
Alrighty, thank you very
Appreciate you,
much,
man.
sir. Awesome.